Welcome to Wednesday's Words of Worship. I'm Kevin. Thanks for joining me today. Several years ago, a saying became popular. It was, stay in your lane. It basically meant, mind your own business, or you worry about you, and even stick to what you know or do what you do good, and I'll do what I do good. Now, there's a story in 1 Samuel 17 that most people are familiar with that I'd like to use today. It's the story of David and Goliath. Now, if you remember the story, David was a young shepherd boy, and he was sent by his father to take supplies to his brothers who were serving in the Israelite army under King Saul. Now, the Israelites were squared off against the Philistines at the valley of Elah. Goliath was a huge Philistine giant, and he would come out every day, and he would taunt the Israelites, and even taunt the God of the Israelites. And if you remember the story, no one would volunteer to go fight the giant. So David arrives on the scene, and here's Goliath taunting his people and his God, and he volunteers to go fight the giant. King Saul gives David his armor and his spear and his sword, but the armor was much too big and much too heavy, and David wasn't used to it. So he went out to face the giant with what he knew best, his slingshot and his stones. Now here's the exchange in verse 45 of 1 Samuel 17 between David and Goliath the giant. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." Now David took his duty to defend the honor of his people and his God very seriously. But notice, he couldn't serve in a way that he was unaccustomed to. He had to stay in his lane. He couldn't serve or fight with heavy armor or spears or with swords, but he was proficient with a slingshot. So David threw his stone, and God used it to kill a giant. David understood God's power. He said to the giant that I have come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. And in the other verses we read, David said that he would kill the giant, not for his own credit, but so that the whole world would know that there was a God in Israel. Ray Vander Allen wrote that God has gifted us in something. Just like David, we all have a stone for God to use. So the first thing we can learn from David here is throw your stone. You throw the stone that God has entrusted to you and allow God to use it for his glory. In other words, use your gifts and your talents. Maybe you can play an instrument, or maybe you're an encourager. Whatever God has given you, use it. And second, don't throw your stone or use your gifts so that the world may know about you. Throw your stone like David, so that the world will know that there is a living God. So you may not be able to carry a tune in a paper bag. You may not like getting up in front of people. But whatever stone God has given to you, stay in your lane, throw it, give God the glory, and see what giant God might topple with the gift that he has given you. Hey, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again next week.